Phone on the tray rattled against the plastic edge of the bed rail, and even half sated I knew the ring was wrong. Hospitals have their own sounds. Carts. The soft hush of a curtain being drawn. The little chirp of an IV pump when it wants attention. A cell phone ringing at 4:17 in the morning is not one of them. I reached for it with the wrong hand, the one with the IV taped to the back, and the line stuck on the rail before I got it free. Mr. Pendergast? The voice was a man's, careful and even, the kind of careful that has practice behind it. This is Detective Ralston with the Beaumont County Sheriff's Office. Are you in a place where you can talk? I told him I was in a hospital bed in St. Lasteral, Bridget's, 3rd floor, post-op, and that I'd been there for 4 days because they had to go in twice, and the second time they kept me. I told him I had a morphine pump, and a catheter, and a chest tube, and that whatever he was about to ask me, I would do my best, but I wanted him to know all of that first. I said it slow, and I said it once. I have learned over 63 years that when someone official is on the phone, the first thing you do is establish the floor you are standing on. I figured later I would be glad I did. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "Sir, your wife came into the station yesterday afternoon and filed a complaint. She is alleging that you have been following her. She says it has been going on for several months. She says it has been going on for several months. She says it has happened in our county and in 2 others. She says she is afraid for her safety." I remember staring at the curtain. There is a watermark on the ceiling tile in room 312 that looks like a rabbit if you tilt your head. And I had been looking at that rabbit for 4 days. I looked at it again now, and the rabbit looked back, and I waited for the rest of what he was saying to land. It didn't land all at once. It landed in pieces, the way a hard thing always does. "I'm sorry," I said. "Can you say that one more time?" He said it again. He used different words the second time, gentler ones, the way a man does when he hears himself in his own ear and decides he was a little too flat. He said his job at this stage was just to take a statement. He said he wasn't accusing me of anything. He said he understood the timing was unusual and that he had a few questions, and would I be willing to answer them? I said I would. He asked me where I had been on the evening of the 11th. I said I had been in this bed. He asked me where I had been on the 3rd. I said I had been in this bed. He asked me where I had been on the 3rd. I said I had been in this bed. He asked me about the 27th of the month before, and I had to think, because that one was before the surgery, and I told him I would have been at home in the recliner, because that was the week the cardiologist had me on bed, rest while they figured out what they were going to cut. He asked if anyone could verify that. I said my son had been by every day that week. I said the visiting nurse had come Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday and signed a sheet. I said I had a cardiac monitor that pinged a server in Tulsa every 15 minutes, and a man in scrubs could probably tell him exactly which chair I had been sitting in. He went quiet again. I could hear him writing. "Sir," he said, "I'm going to be frank. The dates your wife provided to us are dates on which, based on what you're telling me, you would not have been physically capable of being where she says you were." "No," I said, "I would not." "Is there anyone else in the home?" "My wife," I said, and then I heard myself say it, and I heard the shape of it, and I felt something in my chest that had nothing to do with the chest tube. He told me he would be in touch. He told me he would be in touch. He told me not to call her. He told me not to drive anywhere, which made me laugh once, a short, ugly laugh, because I could not have walked to the bathroom without the rail. He gave me his direct number, and he asked me to call if I thought of anything else. I lay there after he hung up. The rabbit on the ceiling was still there. The IV pump chirped. A nurse came in and asked if I needed anything, and I said no. "I'm all right, thank you, sweetheart," and she patted my foot through the blanket the way she always did and went back out. And I thought about my wife of 31 years, and I thought, slow and quiet, the way an old man thinks. She knows where I am. She knows. She drove me here. That was the first thing. The second thing came an hour later, when I was awake enough to pick up the phone myself instead of having a nurse fetch it, and I called my son. My son is 41 and an accountant in a town 2 hours north, and he answered on the second ring because that is the kind of son he is. I told him what the detective had said. I told him exactly. I did not editorialize. He was quiet a long time the way he gets, and then he said, "Dad, I'm going to come down. I'm going to come to now, and I'm going to come tonight." I told him not to. I told him to come tomorrow because tomorrow I would have my head clear. I told him to bring a notebook. I told him to bring the folder from the file cabinet in my office, the green one, the one with the house papers, and the smaller folder behind it with the bank statements I had been saving. I told him to bring his laptop and his phone charger and a sandwich because the food in here was an offense. He said, "Okay, Dad." He said it the way he used to say it when he was 12, and I asked him to hand me a wrench. He said, "Okay, Dad." And then he said, "Are you all right?" I said I was, and I was in a strange way. I had been a husband for 31 years and a father for 41, and an electrician for 46, and I had never once in any of those jobs found that panic helped. Panic is a luxury for people whose problems will solve themselves. Mine would not, so I lay there and I thought about the past 6 months. I thought about the small things. The new password on her phone. The way she had started leaving the house at odd hours to get air and coming back with no bag from any errand. The night in March when I came out of the bathroom and she was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone face down, and she startled when she saw me, and she was not a woman who startled. The credit card statement in May, with 2 charges from a hotel 40 miles away on a night I was at my brother's funeral in Missouri. I had asked her about that one. She had said it must be a mistake. She had said she would call the bank. She had said she would call the bank. She had not called the bank. I had let it slide. A man my age with a chest like mine and a daughter starting law school and a son with a new baby does not go looking for reasons to blow his life up. I had told myself I was imagining it. I had told myself she was tired. I had told myself she was tired. I had told myself a lot of things. I was not imagining it. What I had not imagined, what I could not have imagined sitting on the porch in May with the credit card statement on my knee, was that she would do this, that she would walk into a sheriff's office and put her hand on a Bible and say my name in a complaint, that she would bill the thing out of dates I could not have driven to and places I had not been. I lay there in that bed and I thought about my wife the way you think about a stranger whose face you almost know, and I thought, she has been planning. That was the third thing. When my son got there the next afternoon, I was sitting up. They had taken out the catheter that morning and I was a man again, more or less. He came in with the green folder under his arm and a sandwich from a real deli, and he set the sandwich on the tray, and he looked at me and his eyes went red just briefly, and then he sat down and said, "Okay, walk me through it." I walked him through it. The phone call, the dates, the 6 months before, the credit card statement, the hotel charge, the password, the funeral. He listened. He did not interrupt. When I was done, he opened his notebook and he said, "Dad, I want to say 2 things. The first is, I love you. The second is we're going to be very careful and we're going to be very fast, and I need you to do exactly what I tell you for about 3 weeks. Can you do that?" I told him I could. He said, "First thing, we are not telling Mom, you know. Not a word, not a hint. When she comes to visit, you act normal, tired, in pain, confused, whatever is easiest. You do not bring up the detective. You do not bring up anything. If she asks you about a phone call, you say a wrong number." I said I could do that. Second thing, I'm calling Aunt Marjorie's lawyer in the morning. The one who did her divorce. He's in Knoxville. He's good and he's mean. I'm going to ask him for a referral down here. I said okay. Third thing, the bank statements, the hotel, anything else like that. I want it all. I want copies. I want originals if you have them. And I want you to think hard about anything else you saw and didn't say anything about. Because Dad, if she's been planning for money. I had not let myself think that part. He said it plain, the way an accountant will, and the room got very still. Fourth thing, he said, and he leaned forward. I want to put a camera in the house. I looked at him. Just one. The little kind. In the den, pointed at the desk. Where you keep the file cabinet. If she's planning what I think she's planning, she's going to want documents. She's going to want to know what's in your name and what's in joint and what's in hers. And she's going to do it while you're in here because she thinks you can't see her. I sat with that. The IV pump chirped. A cart went by in the hall. Do it, I said. He nodded once. He didn't look happy. He looked like a man taking a job, which is what he was. He stood up to go and then he sat back down and he took my hand. I have not held my son's hand since he was about 9. He held it for a minute and he said, "Dad, I'm sorry." I said, "Not your fault, son." He said, I know it's not. I'm still sorry. He left. I ate the sandwich. It was a good sandwich. It was a good sandwich. The bread was real. My wife came that evening at 7. She came with flowers from the grocery store and a paperback she had picked up at the gift shop downstairs, and a small, careful smile that did not reach her eyes. She had not worn that smile for me in 30 years. I had not noticed she was not wearing it until now, when she put it on. She kissed my forehead. She asked how I was feeling. She fluffed the pillow behind my back, which I did not need fluffed. She sat in the chair by the window and she crossed her legs and she said, "The doctor stopped me in the hall. He said maybe another 4 days." I said, "That's about what I figured." She said, "Are they being good to you?" I said, "They're being fine." She asked if I needed anything from home. She asked if I had been sleeping. She asked if I had been sleeping. She asked if I wanted her to bring the puzzle book. She did not ask about a phone call. She did not look at the phone. She sat in that chair for 40 minutes, and she made conversation with a man she had told the police was hunting her, and her hands did not shake once. I have been married to her for 31 years, and I will tell you, in that 40 minutes, I learned something about her I had not known. I learned she could do this. I learned the woman I had been married to could sit 4 feet from me and lie with her face. I do not say that with drama. I say it the way a man says it when he finally sees a thing he had been refusing to see. It was not a revelation. It was a recognition. When she stood to leave, she kissed my forehead again and she said, "I love you." And she said it the way you say it to a stranger on a card. And then she was gone and the door clicked behind her. And I lay there and I looked at the rabbit on the ceiling and I said out loud to nobody, "All right then." The next 2 weeks were the strangest 2 weeks of my life. My son drove down on a Tuesday and put the camera in. He did it on a day she had a hair appointment, and he took his nephew with him as cover. He told her, when she got home, that he had stopped by to drop off a casserole his wife had made because Dad was in the hospital, and he wanted somebody to be eating real food. She thanked him. She put the casserole in the fridge. The camera was the size of a smoke detector, and it was a smoke detector, the legal kind, with a little eye in it that talked to my son's phone. He showed me the feed on his laptop on Wednesday afternoon. The angle was good. You could see the desk and the file cabinet and the chair behind the desk. You could see the corner of the rug I had picked out the year we moved in. She went into the den that Wednesday at 4:30 in the afternoon. She sat at my desk. She opened the file cabinet. She started in the top drawer and she worked her way down, and she took photographs with her phone of every page in the green folder and the folders behind it. She took photographs of the deed. She took photographs of the IRA statements. She took photographs of the will. She took photographs of the life insurance papers. She did it for an hour and 12 minutes, and then she put it all back the way she had found it, except for one thing, and the one thing was that she put the green folder back upside down. She did not notice. The label was on the bottom now, and that was how I would have known, even if I had not been watching, that she had been in there. My son and I watched the whole thing on his laptop in my hospital room. He muted the audio because there was no audio worth hearing. We watched her in silence. When it was done, he closed the laptop and he said, "Dad." I said, "I see it." He said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I see it." That was Wednesday. On Thursday morning, the lawyer came. His name was Mr. Meering, Halloran, and he was not from Knoxville. He was from down here. But Aunt Marjorie's man had vouched for him, and he was 64 years old and had hair of the color of a nickel and the calmest eyes I have ever seen on a man in a suit. He sat in the chair my wife had sat in, and he listened to the whole story without writing a thing down. When I was done, he said, "Mr. Pendergast, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I want you to answer them honestly, even if the answer is embarrassing or painful." "Can you do that?" I said I could. He asked me if I had ever been violent with my wife. I said no. He asked me if I had ever threatened her. I said no. He asked me if I had ever threatened her. I said no. He asked me if I had ever followed her, even once, even to check on her, even meaning well. I said no. He asked me if I had ever sent her a message she could interpret as a threat. I said no. He asked me if there was any document anywhere in our marriage in which I had signed away anything important. I had to think about that one. I told him about a power of attorney we had done 8 years ago when I had the first heart trouble. He nodded. He wrote that down. He said, "We will revoke that this afternoon." I said, "Okay." He asked me what I wanted. He said it like that. He said it like that. He said, "Mr. Pendergast, what do you want?" I had not been asked that question in a long time. I sat with it. I said, "I want her to not get the house. I want her to not get my retirement. I want my children to know what she did, and I want her to not be able to tell anyone, ever, that I am a man who frightened her." He nodded. He said, "We can do all of that." He laid out a plan. It had 4 parts. The first part was the hospital. He wanted everything documented, not just the chart. He wanted statements from the nurses on every shift I had been there, witnessed and signed, attesting to the fact that I had been physically present and physically incapable of leaving on every date my wife had named. He wanted the security footage from the hallway camera that pointed at my door. He wanted the log from the IV pump and the cardiac monitor. He wanted the visitor's sign-in sheet for every day. He said he would handle the subpoenas. He just needed me to authorize. The second part was the detective. He said he would call Detective Ralston himself that afternoon, and he would walk him through everything we had. He said he had known Ralston for 15 years, and that Ralston was a fair man and a tired one, and would, in his estimation, be very glad to hear what we had to say. He said, "Mr. Pendergast, your wife filed a false police report in 3 counties. That is a felony in this state. We are not going to ignore that." I had not thought about that part. I sat with it. The third part was the financials. My son was already pulling everything. The lawyer wanted statements going back 5 years on every account, joint or otherwise. He wanted the credit card with the hotel charge. He wanted phone records, which he said he could get with a subpoena once we filed. He said if she has been moving money, we will find it. If she has not yet, we are going to make sure she cannot. The fourth part was the house. He wanted me to change the locks the day I got out of the hospital. He wanted me to do it at a time she was not home. He wanted a witness present. He wanted receipts. He said, "She is going to claim you locked her out of her own home. We are going to demonstrate that she had already vacated, both physically and in her own statements to law enforcement, in which she described herself as too afraid to be in the home." He smiled. "Just a small one. She did our work for us there." I said, "When do we do all this?" He said, "We start today." I was in that hospital another 9 days. I will not bore you with all of them. They were quiet days. My wife came every other evening. She brought flowers. She brought paperbacks. She fluffed the pillow. She asked how I was feeling. She did not ask about phone calls. She did not ask about my son's visits. She did not know about the camera. And she did not know about the lawyer, and she did not know that on the 7th day of those 9, Detective Ralston himself came to my room with a younger officer and a nurse manager and a printed packet 2 inches thick, and they sat with me for 90 minutes. And Detective Ralston shook my hand on the way out and said, "Mr. Pendergast, I am sorry for what you have been put through." I said, "Thank you, Detective." He said, "We will be in touch." I came home on a Tuesday. My son drove me. We did not go in the front door. We went to the locksmith's first, and we bought the locks ourselves, and we drove to the house, and my son's friend, a man I had known since he was 9 years old, and who is now a sergeant with the city police, met us in the driveway in his off-duty clothes. My wife was at her sister's. I knew because the lawyer's investigator had been watching for 2 days, and that was where she went on Tuesdays now. We changed the locks. The sergeant signed a statement. We took photographs with timestamps. My son made me a sandwich, and I ate it at my own kitchen table for the first time in 3 weeks. When she came home, she could not get in. She rang the bell. I went to the door. I did not open it. I slid an envelope under it. The envelope contained a letter from Mr. Van Halloran, a copy of the petition for divorce that had been filed that morning, a copy of the criminal complaint that had been filed the day before, and a key to a hotel room I had paid for 2 nights, where she could stay while she figured out where she was going next. The letter told her not to call me. The letter told her not to come to the door. The letter told her that any communication with me from this point forward would go through her attorney, and that if she did not have an attorney yet, she was going to want to get one. She stood on the porch a long time. I watched her through the glass. She was holding the envelope, and she was not opening it, and then she did open it, and I watched her read it, and I watched her face change, and I watched her sit down on the top step of my own porch and put her head in her hands. I did not feel triumph. I want to tell you that, because if you have ever been the man in this story, you will want to know. I did not feel triumph. I felt something quieter. I felt a thing settle in me that had been unsettled for 6 months, and I had not known it. I felt my own house behind me. I felt my own locks. I felt the weight of my own name, on my own deed, in my own hand. And I felt, for the first time in a long time, that I knew where I was. She got up after a while. She picked up the envelope, she walked to her car, and she sat in it for 20 minutes, and then she drove away. She went to the hotel. I know because the lawyer's investigator told me. She stayed there one night, and then she went to her sister's, and her sister called me the next morning, and I let it go to voicemail, and I have not spoken to my wife since. The court case took 11 months. I will not walk you through all of it. I will tell you the parts that mattered. The judge, a woman about my age with reading glasses on a chain, sat through 3 days of testimony, and she did not say much. She listened. She read the packet. She watched the footage from the hallway camera at the hospital. She watched the footage from the den, the upside-down folder, my wife's hands moving across my papers. She read the affidavits from the nurses. She read the statement from Detective Ralston. She read the credit card statement from May with the hotel charge on the night I had been in Missouri burying my brother. She read all of it. And on the morning of the 4th day, she took off her reading glasses and she set them down on the bench, and she looked at my wife, who was sitting at the other table in a beige suit, and she said one sentence. She said, "Ma'am, I have been doing this for 26 years, and I do not often see a record this clear." That was the whole sentence. She put her glasses back on. She ruled. My wife did not get the house. My wife did not get the house. My wife did not get the retirement. My wife got what she had brought into the marriage, and a small settlement that the lawyer told me was less than what I would have offered her 8 months earlier if she had just asked. The criminal case was separate. She pled out on the false reporting. She did not do time. She did probation and a fine and a record. The record was the part that mattered to me, although I did not say that out loud. My children know what she did. I did not tell them in detail. I let the lawyer's office send them a redacted summary, and I let them ask me what they wanted to ask me. And my son asked a lot, and my daughter asked almost nothing, and she has not spoken to her mother either. That is between the two of them, and not for me. I do not push. I am the father. I am there if they need me. I made pot roast on Sundays, and I take my grandson fishing. And I have a dog now, a slow, heavy old hound. Somebody's daughter could not keep, and he sleeps on the rug in the den where the camera used to be. The camera is gone. I took it down myself. People ask me sometimes how I knew. They ask me how I kept my head. They ask me what I would tell another man in my shoes. I tell them this. I tell them that when a thing is wrong in your house, you already know. You knew in March when she startled at the table. You knew in May when you saw the hotel charge. You knew the moment you put the credit card statement back in the drawer instead of asking the second question. You knew. The work is not figuring it out. The work is being willing to look at what you already know. I tell them that loud is not strong. I am 63 years old, and I have been loud in my life, and loud has never once gotten me what quiet got me. Quiet got me the camera. Quiet got me the lawyer. Quiet got me the locks and the locksmith and the sergeant in the driveway, and the nurse who signed the affidavit and the judge who took her glasses off. Quiet got me my house back. Loud would have gotten me a shouting match on the porch and a restraining order and a worse story than the one I have to tell. I tell them that when somebody you love decides to make you the villain of their story, you do not have to argue with the story. You just have to be, very calmly and very thoroughly, exactly who you have always been. The truth does the rest. It does not do it fast. It does not do it neatly, but it does it. I tell them that the day she sat on my porch and read the letter, I did not feel triumph, and I am glad I did not. A man who feels triumph at a thing like that has lost something he did not have to lose. I felt sorrow and I felt relief, and I felt, mostly, tired. I went to bed early that night. The dog was not there yet. The house was very quiet. I lay in my own bed in my own room with my own locks on my own doors, and I slept the first full night I had slept in a year. That is the story. That is all of it. The phone rang in a hospital at 4:17 in the morning, and a detective said my name, and a year later a judge took her glasses off and said one sentence, and in between, I learned what I was made of. I was made of quiet. Turns out, that was enough. I've had a year now to sit with what happened in that hospital room and what came after. And the thing I keep coming back to is small. It is not the lawyer. It is not the judge taking off her glasses. It is the credit card statement in May. I held that statement in my hand on the porch, and I knew the way a man knows when a board is rotten before he steps on it. I put it back in the drawer anyway. I told myself I was being kind. I was not being kind. I was being afraid. And the lesson I have learned, late but clear, is that every door I refused to open while I had the strength to walk through it became a door I had to open later, from a hospital bed, with an IV in my hand, while a detective said my name on a phone. That is the law of it, the way I understand the law of it. A small thing left alone does not stay small. The startled hands at the kitchen table in March became the false report in October. If I had asked the second question in May, I would not have needed a camera in the den in November. I do not say this to shame the man I was. I say it because I want any man my age listening to me to hear it plain. The work of a marriage, the work of a life, is the willingness to ask the second question on the day it occurs to you, not next week, not when the kids are grown. The day. The other thing I want to say is about quiet. I sat in that bed and I made a choice. I could have called my wife screaming. I could have made myself feel something that felt like power for an afternoon. I did not. I called my son. I called my son. I called my son Lauren. I changed the locks on a Tuesday and slid an envelope under my own door and sat at my own table and ate a sandwich. None of that was loud. All of it was strong. There is a thing that happens to a man when he confuses noise with strength. He spends his anger on the wrong rooms. He shouts at the porch, and he has nothing left for the courtroom. I learned at 63 that the steadiest man in the room is almost always the one who is going to walk out of it whole. Not the loudest, the steadiest. So I will tell you what I tell my grandson when he asks me about that year. I tell him that being a good man is not about being a soft man, and being a strong man is not about being a hard one. It is about being honest with yourself first, even when honest hurts. It is about doing the small right thing on the small right day. It is about being quiet when the room wants you to be loud, and being clear when the room wants you to be confused. That is the whole of what I learned. The truth is patient. So is a man who knows what he is made of.